Net gain, networking, encouragement, and training. Brought to you by Jack of All People Trades, helping snow and landscape companies recruit, train, and retain the best employees. All right, welcome to Net Gain Live. This is Networking Encouragement Training. I'm your host, Evan Tashwire from Jack of All People Trades. I got a very special guest with me today, Anthony Brown from Dig It Rentals. So before I introduce Anthony, I'm going to dive in with a quick encouragement. So I always like the E in Net Gain is for encouragement. So I really want to hit with what are we trying to encourage y'all with today? And my encouragement is reframe one thing to learn from a past failure. So what I mean by that is, if something went wrong, for example, if some of y'all are getting into sales season now with landscaping, instead of saying, oh, that call went horrible or I blew that deal, go back and look at it, learn from it, and then reframe it. What is something you took from it? Hey, you know what? I didn't get that sale, but I understand why that went the way it did. Or I didn't get that, call back, or I kind of fumbled that call, but I understand where I learned. So get that 1% better each time. So I'm going to welcome in Anthony right now. So Anthony, if you want to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about Dig It Rentals, I'll give you the floor for the intro.
Sure. Hey guys, my name's Anthony with Dig It Rentals. What we do here at Dig It Rentals is we are a rental house out of the state of New Jersey. We possess a large amount of equipment, mostly skid steers and wheel loaders. We partner up with a lot of our snow partners in the state of New Jersey. We do some small amounts of winter rentals. However, we sell a lot of our equipment. What we do and what we specialize in is we have a program that's based around the purchasing of equipment at a significant cost savings compared to purchasing new, but you're also going to be getting a like new machine with low hours with the remainder of an extended full coverage warranty. So you're getting all the benefits of a new machine, but you're also not paying the price of it. And we break it down seasonally. That helps contractors like yourselves save money per season. So it makes you more profitable. You could take that money that you're usually spending in the rental business, and rather than renting it, you're building equity in a purchase and it's lowering your cost per season. We usually time our purchases, so we'll run them for about a season, maybe 2 seasons. We'll offload them. You'll have a good amount of warranty left. And then we'll advise you to run them for about 3 seasons because we found out that that's kind of like that happy middle point of 3 seasons. You'll be able to flip out of it with 1 year pretty much left on the warranty to another user. And you could break down those numbers, and it significantly cuts down your seasonal cost by roughly about 50%, 50+%.
Awesome. So you definitely laid out that, Dig It, while rentals in the name, definitely offers more than rentals, especially on the skid steer loader game, also
Yep.
offers the, ownership, rent to own. So we'll definitely talk more about that. But, what we really wanted to talk about today was not just equipment and what you offer, but really thinking about equipment strategy, especially for those of y'all who, we're in March now. Some of you got some more snow coming. Some of you might be fully transitioned to spring or starting to transition to spring, but thinking about that strategy both on your land side and on your snow side. So, Anthony, kind of along with that, with what Dig It offers, what should companies be thinking about as they close out this 25-26 winter season?
So we're in the process right now of we're really laying it on. We're really talking to a lot of different people. We've been attending a lot of trade shows. We're going to be at Stork Snow Alliance this year. We're going to be at SIMA again. What we're talking to customers about now is making your early purchases, right? Making your purchases so you're prepared for the following season. Obviously, I know going into the winter season, your months of September, October, November, you're still picking up contracts that are kind of like hanging out around there, or maybe their previous contractor lost a contract, so they're looking for somebody else. But we're really one part of what Dig It Rentals does is Dig It Rentals, yes, we sell the equipment. The other part is we help you standardize your fleet, and we're also helping you plan for future planning, right? So it's all a numbers game, right? You can break down all the numbers and you can figure out what your costs are. But what we really kind of do is when you're in the snow business, you look at the important things. The important things to us are downtime, for instance, right? Downtime is a huge thing for us. I would rather be in a 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old machine that has a warranty on it that a dealer can back because it's a manufacturer backed warranty compared to running a 20-year-old machine. Now, I'm not saying running a 20-year-old machine that's been paid off 15 times over again is a bad thing. However, when you start breaking down your seasonal costs and your yearly costs, a lot of people look at that and say, well, I own the machine. Well, what are you dumping into it in maintenance, right? This goes wrong, that goes wrong. Oh, $1,000 here, $2,000 here. Oh, okay, we had the bigger one that was $5,000. But when you start adding that up, those $1,000, $2,000 charges, they all add up. And then you start looking at a payment and you're like, okay, the payment might kind of be, very attainable compared to spending all this money on the maintenance of the machine. So what we're doing is we're just talking to customers, letting our clients and our customers know, listen, we're here for you. We have the equipment. We can sell the equipment. And we will help you standardize your fleet. Standardization for us is we run all case for the most part. We do have some Takeuchis, we do have some cats, but majority of everything is case. Um, we deal with one dealer. We call them, one-stop shop for all the parts. They service us. Um, and we're not making 100 different phone calls. So when you have 5, 6, 7 different managers all over the place, right? They all know who to call. It's not just, oh, hey, do I call? Who do I call about this? Who's servicing this? We have one-stop shop. Um, so that's what we're doing, right? Back years ago, 20 years ago, a big thing was, oh, guys wanted to buy the machines, and if they had extra machines, they would put them out for snow and stuff like that. And like I said, they would end up paying them off and then holding on to them. But you start running into a huge cost when things significantly go wrong. For example, undercarriages and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of good takeaways I took. So one thing about net gain I try to always do as a trainer is really break down some of our conversations that we have with guests and really give takeaways for tangible learning. So if you're tuning in here as a business owner, an operations manager, listening to this podcast back, you can take a few things away that you can apply today. So I think a couple I heard, and you can expand on what I say or clarify, is number one is, that you help standardize fleet, which I think is important because you think about that from a training perspective. If you have standard fleet with same or similar controls, similar type feel, it makes training operators easy. It also makes, if you're moving people around, because as we know, winter is never standard. Things go wrong, things go crazy. People don't show up, get sick. Somebody has to be replaced. A sudden storm hits and an operator's not here. So for you to go from one site to another, while the variables in site are different, at least the equipment's the same. And the more consistency you have, the more consistency of operation you're going to have. So that's a big thing.
Correct. You're eliminating the learning curve, right? You
Yeah,
have the initial learning curve, and then if we don't get snow in South Jersey, we can move operators up to North Jersey. Who, yeah, there is an SV 280 or a 321 or 621 up there, and they're very accessible because we can move people, just like you said.
Yeah, and I think this is a big thing. A lot of anything you're saying can really be conveyed by, snow companies to their property managers when selling, because, sometimes if you say, yeah, we have, standard fleet or uniform fleet, they might not translate that immediately, but what that means for them is going to be, like you said, a lot more consistency of service. And when you really educate them and explain why. And one thing I challenge, I've had a heart to combat the lowball pricing epidemic and help snow companies with that. I think one of the things we have to do if we're charging a higher rate, so to speak, is really justify why and educate our property managers and even put it in forms of, I've heard snow jobs say about like help people write their RFPs, but put it in the form of a question of, hey, we have, standard fleet, all running cases. Our operators can go anywhere. Our stuff is 4 to 5 years old, has warranty. You should ask all your bids, do they have the same thing? Because then what that forces a property manager to do is really see, are they comparing apples to apples or not? And if they're not, some might still go with the lowest price because they do and have to learn the hard way. But some, it might be eye opening and educational, especially after a tough winter we just had, to really compare. So, anything else you'd say kind of on the sales side, how you'd coach, purchasing or renting from you to really convey that value?
So, I mean, relatively simple. So we take a relatively large gamble, just like a lot of these larger companies do, and we purchase a lot of equipment, right? So if it doesn't snow next year, it doesn't snow, right? We still have to make the payments or whatever the case may be, right? And we still have to sit on the iron, and I get that. And that's where a lot of people get held up with a lot of it. It's like, well, I only use it for snow. Well, going into this year where we've had above average snowfall, I'm not saying everything went perfect for everybody. And did we have machines go down? Yeah. Were they easy fixes? Yeah. Were some of them difficult fixes? A little bit more. But I will say we were relatively prepared. Okay. And I think that speaks volumes to any company that says, hey, we can be prepared for 2 inches of snow and we can be prepared for 3 feet of snow, right? We can be prepared for snow removal. We can be prepared for snow hauling, any of that. And that's where we've prepared ourselves. Now, just to bring in like real life scenarios, the week before our first big snowstorm, I think was January, up until the day of the storm and a week after, I got over 200 phone calls about renting loaders and skid steers. And I have to tell them no, unfortunately, because everything that I have is being used right now. And it sucks, for lack of better terms. But at the same time, this is why I'm telling people to be prepared. Because if you're not prepared and something like this year happens, which we're always going to be due for it at some point or another, you're ready to go. You're ready to roll. And like I said, equipment is one of those things in this industry, snow industry, the dirt industry, you name it, the farming industry, they're always going to hold their value for the most part, right? So you're always going to be able to collect some type of return. But that's why we circle back around, circle of life, to we know what your cost per season is going to be. We can pretty much narrow that down. And if we can beat the rental houses or we can beat you purchasing new equipment and you're prepared and you're spending less money per cost per season, it's golden, right? So if your cost per season, you're saving significant amounts of money for those 5 months compared to a regular rental house, anything you do with that machine for the rest of that year, it's pretty much paid for because your cost per season really is a cost annually, unless you're putting hundreds and thousands of hours on machines. Obviously, you got to take that into an equation. But for the most part, we have it broken down very well. And it all comes down to being prepared.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing that you mentioned kind of in that last statement, but I even took it down initially, was about one big thing of working and not just looking at somebody like you as a vendor, but really a collaborative partner to talk about how you can avoid downtime and be prepared. So I think a couple things you said that are good for companies to think about is number one, that purchasing early or having these conversations earlier. So like Anthony said, we're recording this in March, he'll be at Storks in late May or late April, excuse me, and then Simon in June. When you see companies like this, definitely sit down and have those educational conversations, stop by their booth, schedule some time with them. But really that redundancy is really big because, like you said, that warranty giving you the redundancy, the backup of the shop. Again, somebody might be able to come in lower and say, well, we have all our equipment paid off, but what if their stuff crashes? Then they have maintenance. And speaking of maintenance, I think another takeaway I heard that this company should think about is, you talk about you have 20-year-old equipment or 15-year-old equipment that's paid off, but you're paying 3,000 for a fix here, 10,000 for a fix here, a couple thousand for a fix here. My question from an accounting perspective would be, are you incorporating all those costs into your variable costs, either for the job or for the customer? Whereas from an accounting perspective, it's a lot easier to focus in a fixed ownership with warranty because that's one cost and you're good to go. So kind of what's your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, a huge part that, on top of the warranty, what we have to look at and we have to consider cost wise on the accounting side of things is like, right, you always have to pay travel time and mileage. That's no matter who you're dealing with. I will give credit to our dealer in regards to an added perk that we also have in their territory of service is we also have 24/7 service. They have mechanics that are pretty much stationed around the state of New Jersey, Pennsylvania for us. So we can call, we're paying a premium for the overtime and the travel time and mileage. But when you take into consideration the travel time and mileage cost, the warranty covering the actual repair, it's minimal. The other thing that people don't really think about, because it's kind of like a hidden thing, not so much if you know equipment and stuff like that, but when you start getting to equipment, right? The 15, the 20-year-old machines, even some of the 10-year-old machines, we got to remember it wasn't that long ago that things switched over to final tier 4 engines, right? They had interim tier 4 and before they had tier 3. So a lot of these manufacturers did a lot of different model changes to cooperate with that whole program. Well, your 15, 20-year-old machine, what are the chances, even if you can get a dealer on the phone if it's a snowstorm during the day, what are the chances of them having an older part in stock? What are the chances of them having access to getting that part? I mean, I have a lot of friends that have a lot of older trucks and they keep telling me when they get to like certain years, that 20-year mark, they discontinue a lot of those parts. They discontinue a lot of those wire harnesses. So you might not even be able to fix it at that point. So now you're down a machine. Downtime always costs you money, no matter what it is. Where if you're running current year mod, make and model, or within 5 years, those dealers are going to be stocking those parts, or for the most part, have readily access to them.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something to think about too from the, holding on because yeah, obviously the appeal is I don't have payments, it's cheaper, but like you said, is it? And then, when you get up to that 20-year mark, do they even have something in place? So kind of, talking about prepping for the season, but as people start, and I know some people are probably not, not even out of winter yet, but this episode can really be evergreen whenever you listen to it. So I'd suggest even once you get out of winter, revisiting this, but as companies start thinking about their, equipment procurement prep for winter 26, 27, and even we'll talk land as well, even landscape, procurement now, which, is in progress slash, has been being done. What are some things that we'll start with? What kind of high level should companies be thinking about? Like if somebody's not sure where to start, where should they start?
To be honest, I would just start looking at your fleet. What do I have? Can I do what I need to do with what I have? How'd I make out this year? Right? Look at the snowstorms. If you go on LinkedIn and you read a lot of the comments, a lot of the posts, and a lot of what people are talking about is anybody, whether you have 2 guys, 5 guys, 100 guys, 1,000 guys, right? A lot of people can look like a hero when it comes to a 1 to 2 inch snowstorm, right? Not a lot of wear and tear on the vehicles, maybe some salt corrosion, stuff like that. But this year really kind of looked at things where it's like, okay, if I get 29 inches of wet snow after I got 26 inches of cold snow and light and fluffy snow, how much stuff broke? How well is my stuff going to hold up if we get another big one, right? Um, that's where I would start with the snow stuff. How did we do, right? How did we do as a company? And we could take this farther. We could say, that's one aspect of it, the equipment aspect of it. If we start looking at other stuff, how did my employees perform, right? Did I have the correct management in place? Did I have territories broken up well enough? Did I have enough coverage on employees? And then on top of that, did I have enough managers managing those employees to make sure everything done efficiently? And was the client happy, right? Was the client satisfactory with our service? So that's where I would start with the snow stuff. Um, Snow is a seasonal business. However, it can be 12-month, right? Because now you're getting to the point where you're switching everything over to landscaping and dirt world and everything else like that. And you always got to be ahead of the game. So now this is when I start bringing all my equipment back, probably in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so. I wash everything. I I mean, we wash everything pretty much periodically throughout the winter, but we'll bring everything back. We'll do a deep clean on everything. We'll go through everything, make sure everything works. All the auxiliary hydraulic ports are still functioning, making sure all the pins and everything are still functioning. We grease everything. We protect everything. And big thing is we fill all the machines with fuel, right? Because you don't want to leave it at half full because then you get condensation when it gets warmer and all this other stuff. Going into the dirt world, right? I've already looked at my dirt construction equipment back in September when I was putting that stuff away. So it's a constant cycle going over and over and over again. Um, But I would start looking at snow now. Were my clients happy? Was everybody happy? The employees, that whole aspect of it. Now going into the dirt world, I might take a second look now right before we go in and be like, what do we want to do? Look at my dirt equipment. It's all prepped. It can go out. It can do dirt work. It's very functionable. Everything we have is pretty much 2022, 2023s. Is it time to rotate out of that? Because part of our program, like we've been talking about, is we rotate our fleet yearly, right? The dirt equipment we'll hold on to for a little bit longer. Um, but you start looking at it, it's like, I could get pretty good value for this. Excavators, mini excavators, skid steers, track loaders, all that kind of stuff has all gone up. Brand new pricing is very high. So maybe I could get out of this for a pretty good penny and I could get it, roll into something else, right? And I'll be more than covered for the dirt world. And it's just a vicious cycle going over and over. You look at things about 5, 6 months prior to you actually needing it. And then you look at it right before. What do I do? Same thing with your trucks. You start looking at trucks. Okay, well, we're hitting about 50, 65,000 miles. Do I really want to drive this thing to 100? What's the values? Go do a quick Google search. What are trucks going for at 100,000 miles? Well, what are trucks going for at 50,000 miles, right? So, do you get your best bang for your buck now and roll into something that's going to have warranty and be covered? Or do you stretch it out and maybe say, hey, I paid this thing off. I can drive this thing till 75,000 miles or 100,000 miles. I'm only losing maybe 5,000 bucks. I don't know off the top of my head. Um, okay, maybe I'll go to that point. But you gotta periodically stop, stand back, take a look at the big picture. What are you trying to accomplish? Right? You're trying to make money, trying to make the most amount of money as you possibly can, and you're trying to get work done, right? Well, what are the best options for me as a company owner to be able to do that the most efficiently?
Yeah, I think really good takeaway. And the common theme I heard there as a takeaway is definitely feedback and evaluations. Like you said, taking that step back, both with your equipment, looking at your fleet, giving an honest assessment of where everything was at. Like you said, if things were breaking, if things aren't working, having that honest assessment of,
Right.
yeah, I'd love to hold on to this because it's paid off, but it's just causing me too much headaches. And from an employee
Well,
side, oh, go ahead.
a lot of the valley that people fall into is they get too caught up in the day-to-day stuff where they don't step back and they don't look at the big picture and like, what are we trying to do here, right? So if you get kind of stuck in that whole day-to-day thing, you don't have any planning moving forward, right? What I've noticed with a lot of people is when you get stuck in that day-to-day stuff, you're losing money because you're
Yeah.
not looking at it, right? You're just like, yeah, go ahead, go get the parts or go do this or go do that. But like if you take a step back and you look at it and assess it, and going off of what you said, Evan, you have to be honest with yourself, right? You can't be like, oh, well, that thing's been good to me for 5 years. It's got a couple issues here and there, or whatever. You have to be honest. Be like, well, really, how much money did I lose because that thing was down for 2 weeks and it missed two big snowstorms? Maybe we should get it up to par, either dump the money into it and fix it properly and not put duct tape on it, right? Or do we rotate out of it? You just have to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. And I was going to say from the, not just the money side and the equipment side, which is obviously important, but even from the employee engagement side, Gallup's research has shown the factor that actually is the biggest demotivator to people is not having the materials and equipment needed to do the job. So if you have equipment that's breaking down or that is not, chains are breaking or attachments are breaking and you can't hold your pusher on properly and that's consistent and persistent, that's going to demotivate your employees and ultimately cause them, especially your best people, to want to start thinking about working somewhere else because they
Well,
have
that's
that
just
better equipment.
that's just the thing. Like, it say just spitballing numbers, if we bring 500 employees in to do snow removal, and some of them are shovelers, some of them are equipment operators, and say I have 200 machines. Well, if 100 of them, I know it's a big number, but if 100 of them go down, that's 100 people that I can't put in a seat, and they're going to say, well, I'll go work for somebody else because they have a machine. They're offering me money to go run a machine, and you don't have a machine for me to run. So that's why we constantly, our biggest thing when it comes to the snow season is we maintain, 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 right? So after every big snowstorm, after, pretty much most snowstorms, I would probably say the bigger ones we probably put a little bit more time in, is all our managers, they send in a list of what went wrong, what's the problem with all this equipment, pushers included, cutting edges, skis, all that kind of stuff. And we have a team of people that just go out and we replace skis, we replace cutting edges, we fix machines, um, you know, stuff that they just had to get together and put together to kind of like get through the storm, and everybody does it, right? But we'll go out and we'll spend as much time as we need to. I mean, sometimes that's the worst part about snow. The snow removal is actually the easy part. It's the whole catch up part for the next week, trying to fix everything, preparing for the next thing. So,
Yeah, definitely. And kind of what I'll close with before I give you the floor to close the recording part is just, recapping some of what you said about taking that time to strategically plan and evaluate. And, definitely you said look at your fleet, but I do agree with you also look at your employees. I highly suggest, engagement or pulse surveys for those of you that have companies, and they can be simple. Those are things I can help with. I actually did a 4-part series on here on employee engagement. So on the Net Game podcast, I'd highly suggest you check that out because even if you've never done it or don't know what I'm talking about, there's tangible things you can do and you can implement today. And same thing with the clients. You can definitely do surveys, meetings, getting their feedback, understanding what worked well, what didn't, and also appreciating them for this season. So anything free that you can do to appreciate your clients, offering them, say, a training that, you book for your team that maybe applies to them as well, something like that can really hit home. So the last thing I'll kind of say, because I agree with you on this thing about, people being caught in the day to day and not being proactive is, a lot of times I think that's why I haven't had more people at things like this when I've done the live meetups is because, oh, I see it, that's nice. And then it's like, oh, but I got pulled on this, I got pulled on that. And I think what I would suggest to companies is start small and just make kind of consistent improvements. Just like if you're trying to work out, you're not going to go from couch potato to running marathons and, being a super lifter and a bodybuilder. But you've got to start somewhere, even if you're saying, hey, I'm just going to walk a half a mile a day, or I'm going to work out 2 days a week or 3 days a week. So I would suggest the kind of same approach when it comes to stepping back and evaluating your business, even if you're saying, hey, I'm just going to start with a half hour on 2 days where I'm going to sit down, I'm going to sit at my computer, we're going to make notes about the equipment, or I'm going to go talk to the team and say, hey, what went well with this equipment? Where can we improve? Whatever it is, just taking those small steps back, same with your employees, same with your customers, and doing one or two things to improve and sticking to that consistently. Because I think even research has shown you're much more effective. The consistency is much more effective. I love the Simon Sinek video where he said, going to the gym for 9 hours in one day will not get you in shape.
right.
Walking for 30 minutes, 3, 4 times a week will get you closer. So I think same thing, because I do see not only the fires of the day, but sometimes the response to that is, oh yeah, we'll have a big day or two of strategic planning where we do and talk about all this. And I think those are good and those should be part of it. But if that's all you do and there's never follow up consistently, like, if you do all this strategic planning about your equipment and never actually sit down and evaluate piece by piece and have conversations with people like you, same thing with your employees, you don't get anywhere. So, kind of a
Right.
close here. Any final thoughts, anything you want to say for going into the spring?
So just like building off of what you just said, I mean, you know, we have a very nice spreadsheet that we've built out for cost of just equipment alone. Um, and I'm open to conversation about anything. A lot of guys just need to going based off the whole stepping back and looking at everything, right? If you're a snow contractor and you want to grow your business, right? You're not going to go 0 to 100 instantly. You're not going to go from 5 employees or 10 employees to 100 and 120. I've always told my kids this, and I will live by this because my father told me this. You always got to build a foundation of a good business or a house before you build the first floor and the second floor and the third floor, right? You don't build the top floor before you build every other floor in the foundation. So you got to build the foundation. You have to have a good manager staff. You have to have an idea, right? You have to have a vision. Like I see people on LinkedIn all the time, chief visionary. Like that's the best title you can have, right? Because you had a vision and you made it come to life. What we do at Dig It Rentals, also on top of everything else that I've just pretty much laid out for everybody, is this program helps you grow. right? So we have a separate category in our Excel sheet that we've made. With the money that you're saving without purchasing new and buying like new low hours, like Dig Rentals offers, with that money that you're saving year over year over year, season over season over season, there is a growth category, right? So say you're renting a machine for $15,000 a season, and I can get that cost down to you for about $6,800. Well, call it 7,000 for easy math. You can technically run two machines, the same machine that you're renting for 15,000. If you get that cost down to 7,000, you can run two machines. What does that ultimately do, right? Now you have double the machines. Now you can put double the workforce out. Now you can do double the work, right? So our program consistently helps customers and contractors who do snow specifically grow year over year over year, so you're able to take on more work. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to go 0 to 100. You're not going to be a $1 million company to a $100 million company overnight. You have to have growth stages, because if you don't have growth stages and you grow way too fast, then that's where people start to fail, right? So
Yeah,
build
I
that
think
foundation and grow from there.
I like that. And that might actually be something we come back with in the future because I feel like growth stages could be a whole podcast in and of itself, maybe even a whole series. But yeah, so this has been just for the LinkedIn Live audience and podcast audience. This has been Net Gain Networking Encouragement Training with Anthony Brown. So Anthony, I know I'll leave your stuff in the description of the podcast and YouTube videos and everything. But where do people want to, if they want to talk to you about the spreadsheet you just talked about or get a hold of you, where do they get a hold of you at?
You could go out to our website. Our office number is on there. You'll probably reach me because I'm the one that answers the phone. Our website has a lot of our equipment up there. We just updated the whole thing and it's looking pretty sweet. You can catch me at Snow Alliance and at Storks. Find my booth at SIMA. We're also going to be sponsoring the 25 Best Companies Award again this year at SIMA. You can always shoot me an email at anthony@digit.rentals. No.com. Anthony@digit.rentals. And like I said, just give us a shout. Google us. Give us a shout. You could also find me at anthony.digit on Instagram. Reach me any way you can, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anyone.
Awesome. Well, I definitely suggest y'all reach out, make that connection. This has been Net Gain Networking Encouragement Training. We're going to get out here. So let me just get the recording stopped. With the weather, but you ain't gonna slip and fall with that. Why? Cause we snow fighters, we assaulting that. Get it, salting that. King me the salting rap. Clown brokers, end of the road.